Start meeting. Share better.
Muted.
Patient samples. Let's say that you have 6 patients. Each patient did the CGX and the PGX. That bag is going to have 12 separate sample bags in it, and you're going to use that same tracking number 6 separate times in the portal. It's a critical step. What that's doing is it's creating a simple manifest to the lab that they know that in that bag with that tracking number, they're expecting 12 samples from 6 of your patients. Guys, I can't emphasize enough the importance of not missing this step. When you make a mistake in this process, it's not that your samples are going to be disregarded, but I will tell you this. When the paperwork and the samples come back in the lab, somebody in that laboratory is opening that bag and they're removing the samples. If everything in that bag is correct, it immediately is processed to the next step. If they open the bag and you have failed to give them the tracking number, if you have failed to put each sample in a separate bag, a common mistake is a patient will put, a rep will put 2 tubes in one bag, thinking that's one patient, so I can do that, and they put both of the paperworks in with those. That won't work, guys. Now, it's not that they're going to throw that away or disregard it, but it does go in a pile at the lab that they're going to come back to after they process everyone that got the process correct. So think about that for a minute. If you get it right, you're very quickly going to go to the next step. If you get it wrong, it will be processed, but it's going to be processed at the convenience of the lab. So it's a big deal, guys, to understand these little details and do the very best you can to get it right. And once you do it a few times, it does become self-evident. I realize there's a lot of moving parts in the beginning until you get used to it. So at this point, I am going to open this up to questions and answers. I don't know the most efficient way. I'm sorry? Oh, yes. Don't know the most efficient way to do this, guys. So I'm going to open up the screen here. I'm just going to start taking, I know that you all have written, I don't know what the best way to do this. Felix, you just asked how long can we keep the sample. The samples will save almost indefinitely at room temperature. That's a good question. I think what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and I'm going to address questions. In fact, I think it's the best way to do it and the fairest way to do it. I'm going to go to the top, I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to take relevant questions. So now, guys, if you want to just type your questions in, I will get to it. And okay, Rebecca Bannon. My name is not on the student list, even though I did sign in properly. Rebecca, what I would like you to do is just send me an email, if you would. My email address is andy@dnaproject.net. andy@dnaproject.net. If you feel that you did not get documented properly for the training, go ahead and send me an email, and I'll make sure that you get credit, because obviously I do know that you were here. Bear with me, guys. I'm scrolling down here. Oh, okay. I apologize, guys. I'm trying to scroll down to where we get to the questions. Bear with me, folks. We're getting there. Okay. Okay. Mark asked the question, what happens if the patient changes the information they provided? That's a little bit confusing, Mark, and I would ask if you're still with us, maybe give me a more specific example of that, because If the patient changes the information they were provided, I guess it would be dependent upon what that information, what information you're talking about. If it's something that quality control has asked, if they put your file back into the status of pending agent revision, then that will give you the opportunity to put that information back into the file. Otherwise, what I would suggest that you do is that you would email that to your manager. I should be clear on something that brings something else up. There are things that you're able to do, and I walked you through the process of how to respond when something is in pending agent revision. There's a couple things, however, that you cannot do, and let me tell you what that is. Sometimes, and unfortunately often, quality control is going to come back and say that you did not get a clear photograph of the driver's license, or you did not get a clear image of the insurance card. Guys, that's obviously a bad deal. You want to really make sure that you did that correctly the first time, because otherwise you're going to find yourself going back to your patient for that information, or not for that information, but to retake the photograph. And if you have to do that, what you do is you're going to be emailing those photographs to your manager. You cannot go in and change the photographs, but your manager can. So again, what's happened is you've created a delay there on your file. The manager has to get that information and get it through the appropriate channels before the file is actually going to be updated, and that can take sometimes a couple or even a few days for that to happen. So, Mark, that's a bit of a vague answer to your question, but I would say contact your manager, because your manager can handle that. Stephanie, I have had people that cannot sign their name and only print. On their drives has only, on their driver's license has only initials. They put the same initials and it was denied. How do we work around that?
Pockets.
So
They took the
if on
company
their
credit
ID,
card and racked
I've
up
had a
more
similar
debt than you
situation,
could afford to
Stephanie.
pay back.
If
They
on their
became so
ID,
obsessed with keeping their jobs
they
that
had
they forgot
initials,
to do their jobs.
and then they put
And after
initials
all
in the
that
boxes,
failure, all that
and for
disappointment,
some
and all that
reason, if those
incompetence,
initials
your
look like
employees
the
came
initials
to
on
you
the
and
driver's
said,
license, and
"We
for some
deserve a
reason quality
raise."
control kicks it out,
If you're a reasonable
I
person,
have,
that should
as a
make your
manager,
blood
been able to
boil.
go
And
back
yet,
and
that is
talk to quality
exactly what it
control
feels like to
and
be an
point out to
American
them, hey
taxpayer.
guys,
The first
those
3
initials
words
are
after
actually the same as are on the driver's license, and they'll look at that and say, okay, that's acceptable. Somebody just didn't pay that close of attention, because believe me, some of what we see as signatures just don't look like signatures. So let your manager address that as well, and make sure again that you're just doing the best that you can to get the best signature as possible. Stephanie, you're asking a question and you're saying Matthew. I'm not sure if you're addressing that to someone else in the group, but your question was, will the holds on samples be in less time? Some are going on hold for 3 weeks with the lab. Guys, when you see something in a hold status, there is a reason for that, and that's going to be something that your manager is going to have to determine and get that reason back to you. Believe me, nobody wants anything to be delayed. But as I was saying before, unless it's done exactly correctly, delays can and will happen. You should just expect that. But the reason that something could go on hold, there's a number of those reasons, and your manager can find that out for you. Valerie, are there penalties for lots of rejects, or are there any limits on how many rejects you are allowed? I know the aim is for approvals, but I wanted to know about the rejects. That's a good question, and my hat is off to anybody who may be on this call or listening that has ever performed the duties of quality control. I'm sure that you can understand that with the number of files that these guys look at and process, files are rejected for many reasons. I'm going to say that one of the most common reasons that a file is rejected is because the insurance was incorrect. And what I mean by incorrect is, if you would see the number of these files that get submitted that are not a PPO, they are an HMO. That's one of the biggest reasons that these files actually get rejected. But there's a number of reasons, and when it rejects, I showed you the process for going in there and actually looking. If you go in on the left-hand side with the drop-down arrow and you go into the QC status, you'll see the reason for the reject. What I would tell you is there's no limit on how many files you're going to be allowed to be rejected. Just please go in and look at the reason for the reject and adjust, learn from that so that you understand moving forward why your files rejected in the past, and hopefully you can avoid that in the future. Patricia, when do we get the kits? Patricia, that depends on the process that your manager has in place for the ordering of kits. I will explain that when your orders go in, kits are ordered, not shipped, are ordered every Monday. So if you place an order on Monday, that swab order will not even be processed until the following Monday. For my people, I tell them to have their orders in to me by Saturday. I transmit that order across, then I know that the order will be placed on Monday. The kits will ship out. Most of the time they will arrive Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. But if you place an order on Sunday and it doesn't get in process, you're going to be waiting a week before that order even takes place, so 2 weeks until you receive your kits. Mark Wilson, ASA equals aspirin. I took a guess at that, and I was right. So it's interesting that we knew that, but somebody in quality control didn't. And that's a great example, guys. It's just, ASA means aspirin, but somebody in quality control didn't realize that, and you needed to put in there it means aspirin. Simple as that. Felix, when do you make an order? Felix, I do not understand that question. If you're still with me, type it in at the bottom with a little more information. Tony, somewhere in the written training Q&A link, it said something about putting a different date on the PGX than the CGX if doing both. Can you comment on that? I do not recall having seen that. I don't believe that that's in my group's Q&A, and Tony, I think you are part of my group. If it is, I've got something wrong. There would be no reason to have a different date on a PGX than a CGX at all. So perhaps we can talk about that offline, but I don't know where that appears. Felix, for how long can we keep the sample? Talked about that before, indefinitely if they're kept in the dark at room temperature. Aaron, oh, sorry, Aaron, should we type our questions? Yes. Kim, hi, Andy, will this training be available online so that we can rewatch it as many times as needed on our own schedule? Kim, the short answer is I intended for that to be the case, but at the beginning of this training, I did not hit the record button, so this training is history. We are working diligently to put the training up on an actual training website, so that you will be able to go back, you will be able to rewatch it as many times, and more importantly, you'll actually be able to go through training. Future reps won't be limited to Tuesdays and Fridays. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do weekly support calls, a number of those calls, perhaps 3 a week, that you can simply call in. We can pull the training up in the webinar room, and we can simply talk about anything that you want to, that you need clarification on. And we're also going to get into some sales training. Aaron is with us. Aaron Barnes, I believe, was it Aaron Barnes? No, I don't think it's the right last name. Aaron is our company trainer. He is our company sales trainer. He travels across the country and does training, and he's going to be attending those with us as well. So a lot more to come and a lot better information.
Unmuted. Muted.
Okay, guys, I just got out of place on my questions here. Bear with me. Okay, I found where we were at. In New Mexico, some people have a Medicaid card and a Medicare card, which is considered primary. I want to say that Medicare always comes ahead of Medicaid. That's an excellent question, and I'm going to go on the record as saying that I am not 100% sure that I just gave you the right answer. If somebody knows the answer to that question, if you'll please type it in, we'll get to it here in a moment. But I want to say that Medicare always, I don't know why this is scrolling on me by itself, Medicare always overrides Medicaid. I apologize, guys. This thing has a mind of its own, and I keep losing my place here.
Go rent it, smoke a
When
joint.
searching
It's
for,
great. You got that scene where they meet for the first time and Pacino's sitting there with De Niro. You, sir, are a
when
bad
searching
guy.
for info on the
I
Medicare
am the
website,
police.
sometimes there are
It's
no
my job to
results or it
stop guys
says
like you,
HMO.
murderers,
Can we still
rapists,
process
killers.
those
That's what I do.
patients? If
Let
it's
me
an
come a time
HMO, you
when I
cannot.
pass
If it comes up and
cross.
says
I'm going to have to
HMO,
take you
you
down.
cannot.
I don't like it, but I'll
If
do it.
there's
Keeps me
no
hot on my
result,
toes.
I
Work
would
out
say
there.
that I would dig for more
De
information.
Niro comes back.
I would see if they've got any other
There's a
Medicare
flip side
cards,
to that
or
coin.
excuse me, insurance cards,
A friend of
and
mine,
gather
Jimmy, once
all
told
of
me
the
never get
information that
attached
you
to anything that you
possibly
do not walk
can,
out on in 15
and then
seconds.
address
Find a new
that with
spot
your
to eat.
manager.
Coming around the corner. And I also like guys like you that like guys like me because you keep me hot on my toes. But I gotta beg.
Would you go over
And you're
how
right,
we
I'm
are
mad.
to
See
send
me
the
cross, I'm
samples
gonna have to take you
again?
down.
I
I
absolutely
won't like it,
will.
but I will not.
Can everybody, do you still
hesitate.
see,
Great
Salem, do you still
scene.
see my
Now hold
screen?
up. Picture the same scene with Stallone and Schwarzenegger.
Okay, let me back up, guys. We're going to back up here. We're going to talk about preparing your samples for shipment.
You know, there's a flip side to this coin. I might have to take it down. I won't like it, but I'll do it.
Okay, when your status goes to ready for shipping, you're going to make sure that each of your sample tubes has the patient's first initial, last name, and the date of birth. You're going to put the samples in separate plastic baggies that were provided. Each of those baggies has a pocket on the outside of the bag. You're going to then print the requisition paperwork and attach the corresponding requisition paperwork with the test samples. I failed to tell you where to print the requisition paperwork. Let me scroll ahead here for just a moment. On the screen, ignore that green arrow for now. Oops. If you can see my mouse here, if you come over here to the left-hand side, you see in blue PGX and CGX. Only when your file says ready for shipping, not before. You cannot do this beforehand. Only when it says ready for shipping, you're going to come over here to the left-hand side of the page and click on this link right here that says PGX. When you do, it's going to open up a PDF on your computer, and you will select print from there. When that one prints, you're going to select the CGX file. Same thing's going to happen. It's going to open up on your computer, and you're going to select print from there. So that's how you actually print those requisitions off. We skipped that the first time. So you've printed your requisition paperwork. You're going to be taking those samples now that are individually bagged. You're going to be putting them into your UPS shipping bag. And then once you do that, you're going to take the shipping number, the tracking number, and you're going to go back to the portal. Over here to where that green arrow is, you're going to take that drop-down box. You're going to change it from ready to shipping as you see it there now. You're going to select here shipped complete. When you change that status from ready to shipping to shipped complete, a box is going to open up on the screen right here, and it's going to allow you to enter your tracking number in that box, and then you're going to hit the submit button, and that is the process again. What time was that there, Salem?
Good question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, guys, I'm trying to find where I was at again. Bear with me. $15.04.
I mean, 1604.
Guys, you hear me talking to somebody here. We have a new addition here, Salem SUNY. I sent out a notice to my team about Salem. Salem is actually responsible for the look and the feel of this training. He put this together for us in about 48 hours, and he did a phenomenal job. Salem is also going to be available in the future, along with myself, to go deeper, to drill deeper if you have questions, support issues. You'll have both myself and Salem to help you with that, as well as Aaron. Okay, I'm back to where we were. Great training, very well executed, Andy. Thank you, considering this was the first attempt. Jeff, Andy, will you be doing the training from now on? Plus, I have a few questions on my other agents that did not get into this training as they were not notified. Jeff, that was at least partially my fault. I will be doing the training from now on. And again, we will be putting the training up and making it available so people can go to the training anytime. And then the focus of the scheduled times will be for questions and answers. Please go over the shipping again. If one person has CGX and PGX, we just did that. Vanessa, hopefully you understood. If you need me to do it again, type it back in the bottom. Rebecca, Bob, the other trainer, has told us to ask you for a qualification spreadsheet. Also, for the EGXICDIO codes, what is that about? So, guys, there is a qualification spreadsheet in production. I just want to let you know that we will not be using any of the materials from the previous training. So, some of the materials that we were referring to in the past will actually be removed from most of the websites, and we'll be recreating those materials so that we don't have any copyright infringements with our previous trainer. He did a great job for us for a long time. There's absolutely no hard feelings there. We're just going in a different direction, and we most certainly want to be respectful of his materials versus those that we're creating. So at this time, Rebecca, I do not have that spreadsheet available. I will have it available in the near future, and at that time, we'll publish it out to everybody. TIE Terry, Terry, I'm getting to your question, but I need you to log in with both your first name and last name. I've got a Mike W here as well, same thing, I need a last name. Patient listed medication for a pacemaker that I nor the lab can find. If a patient is unable to contact for clarification, is the entire PGX test unusable? Tareen, the answer to that would be it would depend on the other medications that are listed on the PGX test. The absence of one medication in the presence of other medications that would qualify for different conditions would not make the entire PGX test unusable. If, however, you were using that one medication as one of the two conditions the patient's being treated for, then yes, that could cause the PGX test to become unusable. I would think that there would be a way of finding that. I would think that Googling that, surely you could come up with that information, or someone could. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate the compliment. Carol, Andy, I did not mean for my question to be private. I didn't see it privately, Carol. Maybe I didn't see it at all. So if you want to type it back in this window, that's fine. Michelle, if you have a patient with Medicare and Medicaid and under 62, do they qualify? If Aaron is still on here, I'm going to defer to Aaron's answer. Aaron, if you could type the answer to that in, that's an excellent question. And I think that the answer is, I don't know, Michelle. That's an interesting one. If the patient has Medicare and Medicaid and under 62, do they qualify? Because the question is, if they have Medicare under 62, then they must be disabled. Yeah, and in that case, if they've got Medicare and it's Part B, I'm going to say that yes, there's no reason that it wouldn't disqualify them. That's my initial answer. So if somebody knows otherwise, we'll find out, but I'll be sure to get that nailed down.
Aaron says yes.
Aaron said yes, they do qualify. So Aaron was able to answer.
Says if patients can be 18 with Medicare or Medicaid.
Yeah, patients can be 18 with Medicare or Medicaid. Guys, I'm navigating this window as best I can, so bear with me.
Question. Is there one lab in one central location? 60.
Thanks, Salem, for helping me there, because this keeps. Okay, Mark, is there one lab in one central location that processes all these tests, or are there multiple labs located regionally across the country? Mark, I'm going to say that we work with multiple labs. There are certainly primary labs that we work with, but as a company, we do work with multiple labs.
I need
Aaron,
you to send me
important comment from
a
Aaron here. The
copy of
system
your
automatically
driver's
changes
license,
the work,
both of you.
the works the date out. The tests have to be ran on different days, but the system works all that out for us. No need to worry about that. So that's referring to the different dates for a CGX and a PGX. So great, Aaron, I appreciate that. Actually, Aaron, I bet there's a way that I could unmute you. Hang on just a moment here. I'm going to see if I can find you. Here he is. Hey, Aaron, can you hear me? So Aaron may not be with us at the moment, but I did unmute him. What time are we at, Sam, on the questions? At 16:25?
Yep. No, on the questions? No. The questions are 16, 17.
Okay, guys.
16, 16.
What if you drop your samples off at the lab? They do not give you a tracking number. Stephanie, my understanding is that if you drop the samples off at the lab, they must be packaged in the same packaging with a tracking number on the outside of it, and you must handle it the exact same way in the portal. So even if you do drop the samples off at the lab yourself, they have to be packaged with a tracking number and handled in the portal the exact same way. North Carolina, Patricia, is a state that you are allowed to work in. It is a Medicare state and not a Medicaid state. Is there a report? Good grief, this thing keeps jumping around because there's more questions coming in. Is there a report that the lab generates after the sample is processed? And just, Salem, how are you keeping your questions visible on the screen? Because mine keeps going away. So I don't have that option. It's a report that the lab generates after the sample is processed that we were able to view it. Who gets copies of the lab report? The report, Mark, goes back to your patient. No, that you do not get an opportunity to see that report at all. The report goes to your patient. Is there a cost for the kits, Charlene? No. You are financially responsible for the kits. However, they are provided to you at no cost. In most cases, what's going to happen there is as long as the kits that are being sent to you, we see the production coming back from you into the portal, there will be no questions asked. But if you are sent kits and for some reason you request more kits and we haven't seen the first kits returned into the portal, you're probably not going to get the second order. And then the other thing is if you requested kits and we don't see production coming back from you into the lab or into the portal, you are financially responsible for those kits. And what that means is we're just simply going to give you an opportunity to use one of the return shipping labels and return those unused kits to us. Kevin, I think that your new procedures will be of great help to the Asians. Thanks, Kevin. We do too. I appreciate that, sir. And I just completely lost my spot again, guys. I'm so sorry, but I do want to get through everybody here, and I will if I have to sit here for the rest of the night. 1621. Aaron, again, let us know that a patient can be 18 with Medicare or Medicaid. I tried Googling what the patient gave me, but I couldn't find it. This is Terry again. In that case, how do I respond to the lab? Terry, you're just going to have to tell them exactly that. If you can't get back with your patient and get more information from your patient, if the patient could text you a picture of the medication bottle, perhaps. But if you can't get back to the patient, you can't get additional information, you're going to have to let the lab know that you can't give them any more than what you've already got. Sorry to tell you that. Matthew, what is the age cutoff? What is the age cutoff for what, sir? I'm going to try to give you this answer. Medicare Part B, you're primarily going to see that in 65 and up. However, someone who is disabled at any age could have Medicare Part B, 18 and older. But typically 18 to 65, you're going to be dealing with Medicaid patients, and not necessarily just to 65, could be older than that with Medicaid as well. I hope that answers your question. Will we have a chart to refer to see what qualifies and what does it qualify? Yes, we will have tools like that available. Terry, I see that you said there's about 8 other medications, so if that's the case, you should be in good shape. Okay. Michael, I have a swab that says shipped complete, but the doctor hasn't signed it yet. I would refer that. That sounds like a mistake. I would refer that over to your manager. Your manager's going to have to look into that further. Does the result come part of their MHR, their medical health record? No, the result is sent directly to the patient. The result would become part of their medical health record if the patient shares that result with their doctor and it is submitted to the medical health record. But the results are sent primarily to the patient unless the patient requests otherwise. How long does it take for us to get paid after we send? Latavius, so that is a question I'm actually glad that you asked. Everybody, please listen carefully. The date that you send your samples has absolutely nothing to do with the date that you will be paid. Guys, we are paid on the 15th and the 30th. Let me give you an example. If you send a sample to the lab and the lab receives it on the 15th, on the 10th, if the lab approves that sample, in other words, you go in your portal and it says that it is approved before the 15th. Notice I did not say on the 15th. If it is approved before the 15th, then you will be paid on the following 30th. That same example, if the lab receives that sample on the 10th and it is approved on the 18th, you will receive payment on that on the following 15th. Guys, what you're paid on has absolutely nothing to do with when the lab receives your sample. It is when the lab approves your sample. And you are always paid the following pay period from the date of that approval. Please understand this. This is probably one of the areas that's the most misunderstood and the most frustrating for both you, the agents, and us, the managers. I hope that I explained that clearly. Now, Aaron also chimed in there. Aaron, I think you're unmuted if you have a microphone. Pay date questions should be answered by the managers, as every group has different pay days. So that's even a better answer. I answered how it would apply to my group, but again, so that's a better answer. Pay date questions should be answered by your manager, as every group has different pay days. Okay. Is Cleveland, Ohio qualified for Medicaid and Medicare? Is Ohio a Medicaid state? Is Ohio a Medicaid state? I believe it is, yes. Latavius, how much does each kit cost? I do not know the answer to that. and how much do they pay per kit? I think the question that you're asking, Latavius, is how much do you get paid per successful test, whether it's a CGX or a PGX, and that would have to be answered by your manager. Michelle, carrier test. When will there be any training? Michelle, again, the only thing currently that we have available is the CGX and the PGX. If that changes, obviously there will be training and we will let everybody know that. But currently the only tests that are available are the CGX and the PGX. Matthew, what is the oldest they can be? Matthew, that's almost impossible to answer. It depends on how well they were stored. Mark, will the patient be educated on what to do with the lab result? Yes. The PGX result, that is something that the patient can keep on their person at all times. It's something that should be readily available. Any interaction with a doctor, the patient should make their PGX report available. Now, the CGX report is going to get a positive or negative result on the gene mutation, and that report would need to be interpreted by their doctor. So if they had a positive result, they would take that report to their doctor for interpretation. All right, I got some background noise here, guys. Bear with me.
Turn it down.
Okay, had to get rid of that. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, we're almost at the end here, guys. Eric, when will we have training on how to find patients? Eric, my first answer to that is I would talk to your direct manager to begin with. That's going to be your number one resource, but I will tell you that the company is going to be offering some sales training. Aaron Barnes is going to be involved in that. Myself, I'll be involved in that, so we will update you on that as to when that all comes together. We are working on it actively. Felix, really training. Okay. 1633 is Maryland, Virginia, and D.C. qualifying states. Maryland is a state, Virginia is a state, D.C. is not a state. That's District of Columbia. The only area that, to my knowledge, that we do not have available is New York, the state of New York. So anything outside of the state of New York, you should be good to go. Matthew, what is the oldest a patient can be? Is there any cutoff where they are considered too old for us to help? The answer to that question is no. There is no top age. Chandra, do we need to have a doctor's order to do the testing? Chandra, great question. Understand that one of the things with us that we always make known is that a doctor is absolutely involved in the testing process. Anyone or any company that states that these tests are available without a doctor's involvement, that is a false statement. There is a doctor always involved. That's why you send the file over to quality control. Quality control makes sure that that file is complete. Once it's complete and all the information is there, that file is passed to the doctor who validates that file, speaks to your patient, and orders the testing. If we are not in a Medicaid state, then our patients would need to be Medicare patients. That is correct. One step further there, Messiah, they would need to be Medicare Part B. Okay? And that's it, guys. We are at the end. 84 of you stayed. We were up to 134, and we are at 84 people online right now. I'm going to unmute the group. At this point, nobody has typed any more questions in, so I'm going to actually unmute everybody, I think. Bear with me. All right.
Unmuted.
Okay, guys, this might be a little bit. If somebody wants to step up with a question, I'll do the best I can to answer it. No one? Okay, guys, that's going to conclude our training today. I thank everybody, and I will let you know at any point.
Muted.
Okay, guys, that's going to conclude our training for today. We will see you again on Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and hopefully we'll have this improved a little more from the bumps that we had today, but I do appreciate your patience. Thanks, everyone.